In a big embarrassment to the United States, a court in Czech Republic has halted the extradition of Indian national Nikhil Gupta. The Constitutional Court of the Czech Republic stayed Nikhil's extradition to the US, where he faces charges of conspiring to assassinate Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun. This interim decision, remember, comes after Nikhil Gupta contested the earlier orders by the Czech's lower courts, which had approved his extradition. Czech Republic's top court reasoned that extraditing Nikhil to the US could cause him disproportionately greater harm than any benefit, which the court said would be irreversible if later the charges against him are found unjustified. The court emphasized the need to thoroughly review the case and asserted the importance of safeguarding Nikhil's fundamental rights until a final decision is made. On the 19th of January this year, Nikhil Gupta had challenged the decision of the municipal as well as the High Court in Prague, both of which had ruled in favor of the American request for extradition. Nikhil's lawyer had reportedly argued that the municipal court and the High Court did not properly assess the political nature of the act. Now, since his arrest in June last year, Nikhil Gupta has claimed to have suffered human rights violations by Czech authorities, a claim that is now under the Constitutional Court's scrutiny. But how does this case move forward, and how are India's options laid out before it? Let's try and understand this on the broadcast tonight. I'm joined by Daniel Bordman. He's a journalist and he frequently talks about the Khalistani challenge that countries are facing. I'm also joined by Advocate Swapnil Srivastava. He's a senior associate at MZM Legal. Good evening and welcome to both of you. Daniel, let me start with you. Was this expected? Was this something that you expected out of the Czech court, that they will stay the extradition of Nikhil Gupta to the US?
I won't say I expected it. I'm not going to claim to have any international legal expertise in the nuances of different Eastern European countries and American extradition treaties. Our friend, I guess, is a legal expert. I'll leave that to him. To me, it's not shocking. I could have seen this going either way, and I do kind of agree with what the court said here with my experiences with Khalistan, that listen, to the Khalistani radicals, any Indian, no matter what, is forever guilty of everything. So it is very reasonable to assume that his life would be in danger if he goes to the States. And even if mountains of evidence are provided that he was unequivocally innocent, let's say you could even prove definitively he was in Australia the day they alleged he was going to assassinate Pannun. The Khalistanis will still believe that he's an Indian agent who was there to assassinate them, because we have this in Canada over the Air India bombing, where there is absolutely nothing you can say to these people, no evidence you can show them that changes their mind, and then they go and rally and openly advocate for assassinating their political opponents. So all roads lead back to Khalistani terrorism. And if you want to solve any of these issues in Canada, the US, and the UK, we have to address the giant elephant in the room, which is Khalistani radicals who are involved, in Canada at least, in gang violence, human trafficking, weapons smuggling, immigration fraud, you name it. And it's causing
Sure, but
tons
nobody
of problems.
is, Daniel. They claim that they are, but clearly they aren't. Be it the US or Canada, you see, the latest visuals and scenes that are coming out of both countries are Khalistani groups, Khalistani terrorists out on the streets protesting against India.
Yeah, this is a cataclysmic failure of our societies on a lot of levels. I mean, the Khalistani terrorists aren't the only terrorists running around the streets calling for violence right now. I mean, if you see, we have kind of literal terrorist training camps developing on our university campuses all across the West, where people are being told that resistance by any means necessary, glorifying Hamas, Hezbollah, PIJ, teaching students how to be part of a global intifada. And I was raising alarms about this before October 7th started, because the Khalistanis were doing exactly this with impunity, which was advocating for violence, creating literal terrorist training camps, radicalizing youth, getting into the gurudwaras, and causing general chaos. And because we didn't deal with it in the Khalistani issue, it's now metastasized even further out than that, where we have communists and Islamists. The Khalistanis are supportive of them too, but just rampaging around our cities consistently, advocating for violence, and we've lost all semblance of law and order. So if we want to talk about was the Indian government potentially involved, yes, no, again, I'm not a legal expert. I don't know any of the players involved. I don't have a direct phone line to Modi. But yeah, I could say like this, we should get to the bottom of this. Extrajudicial international assassinations aren't a good idea, but what the court has kind of pointed out here is that there is a wider problem of Khalistani extremists paroling the US, which violates people's civil liberties, because we do have gangs of extremists just roaming the country with impunity, and that does present a danger to the general population.
Before I get the legal perspective, Daniel, also let me ask you then, and because you've been, sharing your opinions, you've been vocal about this challenge, what do you think can resolve this? Governments have been speaking about it, more or less it has been lip service so far. I don't see any substantial action being taken against Khalistani groups on American or Canadian soil. What could be a potential impactful resolution to this challenge?
It's hard to say, but I don't see a world in which India backs down without something being done about the Khalistani radicals. So the question then becomes, the West needs to get rid of the Khalistani problem, and what does India need to do to sort of encourage this? It's going to have to be both sides. I mean, you can push around Canada, you can't push around the United States of America. It's one of the laws of geopolitics. So at some point, I think India is going to have to come with some sort of, moderating trade deal, maybe switching some foreign policy on something to be more pro-American, and in exchange, get some sort of, decoupling from Pakistan and a resulting of in sort of tamping down our own internal extremism. But I do think the solution is not going to be a legal one. It's going to have to be worked out by, I think, two leaders on and involve a myriad of complex political compromises and sort of exchanges.
Okay, let me go across to Swapnil also, Daniel, now and get a legal, thought on this. Swapnil, this case has been going on in the United States. We, of course, also keep hearing about Canada's allegations on this, but so far, no substantial evidence that has been provided to India in this case. Nikhil Gupta has alleged that there have been human rights violations in this case. And the Czech court has said that, if later these allegations are found unrelated or absolutely there was nothing against Nikhil Gupta, he would be suffering more harm. How does this legal case now move forward with the kind of no evidence kind of bit that has been going on between the two countries?
Shreya, I think what we need to consider first is the international treaty, which lays down the model provisions for extradition. This was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1990. And the idea of this treaty was that anytime two states wish to enter into a bilateral agreement, they can refer to this treaty. What is relevant in this treaty is Article 3, which are the mandatory grounds for refusal of extradition. Article 3A states that such refusal can be given in cases where the offense is of a political nature. And 3B states that it can be done when extradition is sought specifically to prosecute somebody inter alia on grounds of their nationality or political opinion. Now, in Mr. Gupta's case, the reason why the Czech Supreme Court stayed the extradition, which was ratified by the lower courts, was because Mr. Gupta argued that the lower courts had failed to take into account the political nature of the offense alleged him. The US Department of Justice has indicted him for murder for hire for offenses which are punishable up to 10 years imprisonment. So now when we look at the treaty, the bilateral treaty which exists between the US and the Czech Republic, it also mirrors what has been given in the model treaty, in as much as Czech Republic is entitled to refuse extradition on the ground that the offense is of a political nature. So the real question here, Shreya, is whether the allegations against Mr. Gupta is that of a political nature. Now, when we look at some international experts who have propounded on the issue, generally what a political offense is usually of a non-violent kind. That can include things which affect the freedom of speech and expression, the things which affect the right to protest or form political associations. However, when it comes to violent offenses, things slightly change. In fact, the UN's Security Council adopted a resolution in 2001, Resolution 1373, wherein they specifically stated that no country can refuse extradition of a terrorist on the ground that the offense is of a political nature. But in the instant case, interestingly, although Mr. Gupta has been indicted, he's not a declared terrorist as per the United States government. So, as on today, it remains to be seen how the Czech Supreme Court interprets the issue. And you rightly pointed out that no solid, cogent evidence has been provided, which in turn could have affected the decision of the Czech Supreme Court. And political experts in the Czech Republic.
So, Swapnil, also help me understand now what is the option in front of the United States now that this has the extradition has been stayed. What next now? And how does India see this? How does India participate in it at all if it does?
So, Shreya, so far as the United States is concerned, honestly, they can do nothing at this point of time. They need to sit back and they need to wait for the Czech Supreme Court to come to a decision. Because the thing about public international law is that it is a consent-based system. There might be treaties, there might be model treaties, but if the Czech Republic exercises its sovereignty and says that we do not want to extradite, they don't extradite. The best the US can do is after the decision is rendered, they can approach the International Court of Justice. Now, so far as India's options are concerned, India is nowhere related in all of this, in as much as it's a bilateral transaction between the United States of America and the Czech Republic. Separate talks are happening between the US and India, wherein India has constituted a high-level committee to look into the allegations of whether a raw agent was in fact involved with Mr. Gupta or not. But again, like I said, it's a consent-based system, and both India and Czech Republic reserve their rights as sovereign states to refuse this request by the United States.
Okay. All right. So far, we will have to see how this really moves forward. But Daniel, let me come to you. You know, like we talked about the fact that there is no evidence that has been presented. And a lot of times you've also voiced your opinion on how this is, specifically Canada's case, this has been more to do with the domestic politics of Justin Trudeau. But the larger question, as you said, remains that to cater to a domestic vote bank, you're creating a larger and propagating and encouraging a larger, wider, worldwide problem.
Yeah, these ideas can't really be fully contained. You enable bad ideas long enough, and you let them pump with money and funding and organization, they're going to metastasize. So I'm not sure how bad it is in the United States, but I have a pretty good handle on how the Canadian political system works, and the Khalistanis especially have been experts in hijacking internal nominations where there's very few voters, so they can sort of get one if they just get one radical gurudwara in, they can get their guys in and then start building from there, right? You have MPs like Sikh Dhaliwal, who he's writing a Foreign Agents Registry Act right now, passing a motion, but he's also the one that signed the letter to get Hardip Singh Nijjar into our country after he failed the first 2 times. And he's also, written letters on behalf of Pakistani gangsters before. And you have these sort of, political ideologies. And I think a lot of, maybe the Liberal Party took this sort of, oh, this is cute domestic politics. Oh, this is just, minorities with their issues and talking about, oh, minority things, how cute. We're so progressive without realizing that, no, this is a Khalistani radicalism. And if you bring these people into the Canadian Parliament, like we have done, they're going to start geopolitical issues with India. The leader of the NDP, the third largest party, who has a quasi-coalition with the ruling party right now, he's banned from India. He's a hardcore Khalistani.
Okay.
And these people who come in with radical ideas, whether it be Khalistan, whether it be the Muslim Brotherhood, whether it be radical, neo-communist beliefs, they will start to exercise those beliefs. And, it's one thing when you do it within your own country, yes, that brings its own problems. But when these people have external radical ideologies, Khalistan, they're going to start to exercise their ideology on behalf of your country against another country and drag us into a geopolitical war, which can affect trade.
So there's a lot of introspection that's needed on part of leaders across the globe, Daniel. Of course, to resolve this issue and this crisis that countries are seeing. But we'll have to leave it there. I have paucity of time. Daniel Bordman and Swapnil Srivastava. Thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for joining us on Nation Tonight and sharing your thoughts on this very critical issue. Thank you very much.